I've seen the first 3 episodes of Titans Season 3, and I've got some thoughts. We've got new details on Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, and Pokemon Legends Arceus. And I've got reviews of What If's second episode, and Samuel L. Jackson and Maggie Q's new action flick, Protege. All that and the latest in everything cool today in The Rundown. Hey, welcome to The Rundown. My name is Victor Lucas, and I'm so happy you're joining us here today in the Electric Playground. Today's episode is brought to you by The Gaming Stadium. They are Canada's leader in online esports tournament facilitation. They've got tournaments happening every single weekend that you don't want to miss out on. You can find out all about them at tgs.gg. All right, today's episode is dedicated to Daniel Campbell, who had this great comment. I've been following the game industry since I was a little kid, and I'm an old man now. It still surprises me the emphasis people put on raw graphical horsepower. Is it important? Absolutely. But if game history has taught us anything, it's that power isn't what wins Game of the Year awards. Here's a little exercise. Look at nearly every Game of the Year winner. Now ask yourself if that was the best looking, performing game of the year. More often than not, the answer will be no. That's absolutely true. I don't think that graphics are the be-all and end-all of experiences, but we also all come to depend on games looking better and better. This is a technologically infused art form, and we are always looking to see what is going to captivate us, what's going to blow our minds visually. The Last of Us Part 2 was our Game of the Year award winner last year, and arguably it was the best-looking game of 2020. You'd say Ghost of Tsushima is up there as well, and that was also a contender for Game of the Year. But I think you're absolutely bang on. I think what comes out of a game experience, the way that it plays, the way that it feels, the way that it sort of seeps into your mind, that is really what makes a great game. Good comment, Daniel. All right, let's get started with the rundown. I've seen the first 3 episodes of Titans Season 3, and I've been sticking with this show since it began. I still am blown away by the fact that we have all of these costume superheroes on screens, everywhere. Movie screens, TV screens, streaming screens. And Titans has had a pretty solid production quality to it. I like the aesthetic look of the show. It's darker. We had dark alley fights. We've got some really cool costumes, competent actors, but I've been really disappointed with some of the script choices. They seem a little pedestrian for a comics franchise that has been rooted in so much risk-taking and imagination. Season 2 was just an abysmal experience for me because the Titans didn't really come together as a team until the end of the season. They were just bickering and squabbling all the way along. And Season 3 picks up on some of the awful things that happened in Season 2 to cast members, and there is this real defined effort for the Titans to come together and work as a team. And I did like the fact, and I did appreciate that in the first 3 episodes that I've seen. There's still more episodes to go for this season. But I did sort of see that people were working to try to get along. In these first 3 episodes, Nightwing is called back to Gotham City. Something awful has happened, and I'm not going to spoil anything. And he encounters Batman, played by Ian Glenn from the Game of Thrones series. And he is a very cold, very distant Bruce Wayne / Batman who has a real darkness in him, and he just cannot connect with Dick Grayson at all. He's completely cut off and cold. I'm not spoiling anything by saying there's a huge emphasis on Batman and Joker in these first 3 episodes. I just found it to be so one note. It's just that typical Batman is an asshole and he cannot feel anything, does not have any care, will never let fear creep into his life, and he expects the same out of everybody that he knows. And I find it so frustrating because Batman is a way more interesting character than that. He is the furthest thing from a one-note creation. He's got that hard-nosed discipline in him for sure, but there's a lot more to him. He's the smartest person in any room, and it always drives me crazy, whether it's in films or on, in this particular show, when they kind of reduce the character to these, simplistic elements. I think Brendan Thwaites is actually doing a fairly decent job as Dick Grayson and Nightwing. He looks perfect. They couldn't have cast a better looking person for the role of Dick Grayson and Nightwing. I love the costume, but there is this sort of lack of urgency that I notice in the way the Titans perform their duties. And I find that kind of weird. You know, this is supposed to be about superheroes, but I see these costume do-gooders just sort of walk into frame all the time, you know, and it just feels like the camera has swiveled to, a Comic-Con cosplay meetup. I just don't see the acrobatics and the athleticism. I mean, we've got Starfire in this show. She should be flying in, you know, but everybody's in sort of regular day clothes. It's like the budget is constantly being thought of with the way that scenes are being created and crafted, and so we don't see enough of the super heroics that you would expect with that many superheroes. And Changeling, Beast Boy, I know he's kind of grappling with his full powers and what he can change into, but we see the same creations over and over again. And I feel like that is the major crux of the show, is that it just feels way too talky. It's hitting on huge, massive beats from comic lore. It is kind of simplifying everything. That lack of urgency and action, and these people could be having these conversations on rooftops. They could be having them as they are racing to things to try to stop horrific things from happening. But too often, it's just people in costumes walking into frame and jibber-jabbing for a little while. At least they're getting along, and there has been some fine work. Alan Ritchson as Hawk has been impressing me. Solid performer there. It's cool to see Vincent Kartheiser from Mad Men come in as a pretty big Batman villain. And I like Joshua Orpin as the new Superboy in Titans. I think he does a pretty good job. He's a fish out of water. He's trying to figure out, what he can contribute, and he's got all of these incredible powers. The show doesn't feel super heroic enough. These characters feel a little too whiny, and they're sort of mired in sort of everyday issues and problems. And I know that that's an element of the comics as well, but I think everything should be heightened and turned up a notch. I think The Flash does a pretty good job with that stuff, and Supergirl as well. Superman and Lois is doing an exceptional job with that, and there's some major superheroics and big fantasy elements in that show. I mean, the other thing, too, is that everybody's got to be gritty, and there's a tremendous amount of swearing, and I feel like the show is just trying too hard, and it's not like the Wolfman and Perez comics that I fell in love with in the 80s. These heroes, they're not being beacons of virtue enough. They're like being presented for shock value and to try to keep them contemporary and current and sort of counterculture to the CW Arrowverse stuff. I thought the first season was pretty good. Second season really disappointed me. Third season's off to an okay start. I'll stick with it. But what I've seen so far, I'd probably give a 6.5 out of 10 to. All right, switching over to an entirely different universe, the Pokemon Company had a Pokemon Presents video out today with new details on Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Pokemon Shining Pearl, which are Switch remakes of a couple of Nintendo DS classics from 2006. There are some enhancements to this game, obviously taking advantage of the Switch architecture in the many years since those games came out. So we've got new visuals, everything is kind of super deformed, chibi style. It's very cute, kind of reminds me a little bit of what Nintendo did with Link's Awakening, the Legend of Zelda game. Everything's sort of top down and super cute. They even have a cute contest that they're putting into this game. You're going to be able to put stickers on stuff. You're going to be able to, explore underground for the first time in these games. And there are some modern niceties, like your favorite Pokemon will follow you around, which is kind of cute. It all looks incredibly adorable and very inviting and very also familiar, even though it's tuned and tweaked. It looks like it's going to be a very traditional type of Pokemon experience. What is, I think, more exciting is Pokemon Legends Arceus, which takes place in more of a feudal time period in the Pokemon universe, but it's open world. And so this game evokes what Nintendo did with Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, where there is going to be a tremendous emphasis on exploration and finding and discovering Pokemon creatures everywhere. There's going to be a lot of different people to interact with. There's going to be a lot more, I think, mystery around how Pokemon and the people of the Pokemon universe can coexist. It looks really cool. It looks like this is going to be a game where we're going to sink dozens and dozens and dozens of hours into it. You're going to be able to fly with Pokemon. You're going to be able to ride on them on land and in the water, and it looks beautiful. And the music that they presented in both of these Pokemon games was really nice. There were also some updates for Pokemon Unite, which is coming to mobile devices very soon. It's been very successful launching on the Switch. I have yet to try it, though. It does look cool. cool. And then they're doing a remix version of the Pokemon Cafe puzzle experience as well. So they are incredibly busy over at the Pokemon Company. They've also updated Pokemon Snap with a bunch of new stuff as well, which I haven't had time to go back to. But this is a tremendous time to be a fan of Pokemon, isn't it? Let me know what you think about all of these Pokemon announcements and what you are currently playing in the Pokemon universe in the comments below. All right, I've got a review for you now, and this is of the new movie starring Samuel L. Jackson and Maggie Q. It's called The Protege. Martin Campbell is one of my favorite movie directors. He directed the Zorro movies, which I thoroughly enjoyed. He directed two of my favorite Bond movies, GoldenEye and Casino Royale, which is my favorite James Bond movie. He even directed that Jackie Chan film, The Foreigner, which I really enjoyed a few years ago. And he's back with a brand new movie. It's been a little bit of time since we've got a new Martin Campbell picture. It's called The Protege, and it stars Samuel L. Jackson as a hitman with a heart of gold who saves a little girl who goes through something horrific, and she becomes a lethal assassin herself. And she's played by Maggie Q, who does a very, very good job with the action elements in the film. The one thing that I can say about this movie, I didn't especially enjoy it. I think that it kind of falls flat, but the one thing that I will say is that the action is well crafted. There are some horrifying, violent moments in the film, but I think it serves to tell the story. It's not just completely superfluous and unnecessary. These are awful things that happen to these people, and the movie doesn't shy away from it. I'm not a huge fan of the cinematography. I think everything's brightly lit and feels a little TV movie-esque. I think we've seen a lot of sharper contrasting colors and stuff. Even Casino Royale was such a departure from what we have seen of the super glossy Bond films prior to that. And this movie kind of harkens back to an age where the saturation and everything is just a little too glowy. In contrast to that, I would say that Maggie Q is not glowy enough. I think that she does a great job with the action, but she's not an especially inviting character in this film. There's no real variance in the way that she enters a scene or comes out of a scene. Doesn't matter if she's killing somebody or if she's just having a sort of a flirty conversation with Michael Keaton, who was one of the other stars in this movie. I just wasn't brought into her role enough. It's not like she lacks charisma. She looks incredible on screen, but there's just something about the way that her character was put together that it just doesn't bring me in, like a Jason Bourne or Angelina Jolie in Salt or Scarlett Johansson in some of the action pictures that she has done. There's an element there where I just don't feel super connected. I think that some of her flashback sequences where there's a younger performer going through some horrifying stuff, that was incredibly effective. And I think that help to define maybe some of the coldness and the lack of emotion that the character would naturally have if they went through something like that. But it just makes for a disconnect as an audience member. You don't really care. I mean, I don't want to throw dirt on the performer because she's absolutely competent and she gave it her all for this role, but I just didn't care enough about her. And you juxtapose that against what Samuel L. Jackson does is he kind of walks through the picture, but he's so charismatic, you can't help but care about the guy. Even if he's playing echoes of a lot of characters we've seen before, you're just like, yeah, okay, yeah, wherever you're taking me, Samuel L. Jackson, I'm going, let's go. And the same goes for Michael Keaton, who is maybe a little bit too forward and creepy in his role as he's flirting with people and stuff. Man, it's hard to kind of take your eyes off of him and what he's kind of projecting out there. Now, these are two leading men that have had tons and tons of time to develop their craft. And Maggie Q's been in a bunch of stuff, but I've never seen her so front and center in a picture before. And I admire that happened. I think it's cool that she was given this platform and worked with a director with a proven track record like Martin Campbell. But I expected more out of this whole enterprise. And there are some, logic dead ends that happen in the picture as well, where you're just like, did they forget a reel of the movie? Like, how did that happen? I was brought out of it. The action is engaging, and the performances and the stunt work that happened in those action elements, everybody gave it their all, and I respect that. But we have just seen so many better Hitman with a Heart of Gold. I mean, we've got the Hitman's Bodyguard movies that Samuel Jackson's in as well, which are much more silly and comedic than this, but also more entertaining. But there's so many other options, and I think that this film maybe started with a what if the professional we progressed forward in a story like that, and we saw the little girl kind of grow up to become a deadly assassin and very skilled at her craft. The Professional is a way better movie than this. It's disappointing for me because anytime I see Martin Campbell's name on a project, it has my attention. I was excited to see it, but I was left quite disappointed. I'm going to give The Protege a 5 out of 10. All right, I've seen the second episode of Marvel's What If, and boy, they are trying out a whole bunch of different things with this series, aren't they? This is a fascinating concept based on a classic comic series where Marvel sort of reimagines a bunch of origin stories and different directions that they could go with familiar characters. And this episode is all about changing the idea of what we know about the Guardians of the Galaxy, specifically the origins of Star-Lord, who in this show is embodied by none other than T'Challa from Wakanda. This is an idea where the Ravagers come to Earth, and instead of picking up Peter Quill, they pick up the Prince of Wakanda as a young man, and then sort of take him under their wing, and he becomes the galactically famous Star-Lord. And we have that sequence from Guardians of the Galaxy where Djimon Hounsou meets Peter Quill, but in this instance he meets Star-Lord, and he's completely blown away that he's meeting Star-Lord. He's like a huge hyper fan. It's very cute. Really enjoyed that sequence. Yondu also has a great relationship with T'Challa, although he has kept some pretty big secrets from him. But we also see some other massive pivots in this episode, which stars tons of people that we know from the MCU. Of course, Michael Rooker is back, and T'Challa is revoiced by Chadwick Boseman. And these What If episodes are going to represent his last performances and his last times up to sort of being the character of T'Challa. So it's a little bit heartbreaking to hear his terrific performance again, but it's also quite wonderful. And this reimagining is just crazy fun. Karen Gillan is in this. Brolin is back as Thanos in some really interesting new ways. We've even got Benicio del Toro back as the Collector, who is a linchpin in this whole episode. He's got a really big part in the episode. I'm trying to kind of balance how much I'm spoiling. I'm not going to recap the whole thing. We even have a great appearance from Howard the Duck in this episode. So it's just pure entertainment all the way along, and I really enjoyed it. I liked all of the transitions and the pivots, the unique kind of story structure that honors what we have seen and know, but completely kind of ratifies things in a pretty massive way, and almost in a much bigger way than what we saw with the Captain Carter episode, which kind of followed the first Avengers storyline, almost to a T, with a slight variation on stuff. This feels completely different, and the galaxy that the Guardians are protecting feels completely different, and it's crazy enjoyable. I didn't enjoy the episode as much as the Captain Carter stuff, and that's more my predilection for that theme and that time period, and Cap as a character. I like the Captain America stuff more than I like the Guardians of the Galaxy stuff, but I really did enjoy this show, and I think it's another successful stop on the What If train. Episode 3 is going to be a lot of fun. I've seen that episode, but I'll be back next week to recap and review that. I'm going to give What If Episode 2 from Season 1 an 8.5 out of 10. All right, you guys, that's going to do it for the rundown today. Thank you so much for watching. I will be back again tomorrow with a fresh episode, so please come back for that. Thank you for hitting that subscribe button and that little bell to be notified. Thank you for hitting the follow button if you're following us on twitch.tv/EPN. And thank you, of course, to all of our EPN members. We'll see you tomorrow. And until then, play forever.